Today's topic of discussion is about maxillary arch distalization with infrazygomatic bone screws, biomechanics and clinical perspectives. It's a completely new topic in orthodontics, and we have been working extensively on it. So this is one of the cases that we are planning to share with you. So coming directly to the case, this is a patient who is 19 years of age, female, with a chief complaint of irregular front teeth and a gummy smile. She did not have any form of medical history. If you go to the intraoral and the extraoral photographs, which are the case records which we take when we start an orthodontic case, the first thing is the extraoral photographs, which shows that the chin of the patient is slightly deviated to the right in this case, in occlusion. And when she smiles, she has quite a lot of problems. That is gummy smile and crowding of anterior teeth. If you have a 45-degree view, we would also notice that there is significant gummy smile and crowding of anterior. And if we look at the profile view, we would find that it is a convex facial profile with a deep mentolabial sulcus. The intraoral pictures show that it's quite severe. Now, she has a traumatic deep bite. That's 100% deep bite, where the upper incisors are coming and impinging the lower gingiva. She has a class 2 division 2 with subdivision right side malocclusion. So that's a class 2 molar and a class 2 canine. And the upper incisors are retroclined and the laterals are proclined, which shows that it's a div 2 situation. On the left-hand side, the molar relationship is class 1. So that's a subdivision case. And there is significant crowding of the anterior teeth also. If you look at the occlusal review, we would notice that there is retroclined upper incisors and deep overbite. And there is crowding in the lower anterior tooth. And there is significant amount of deep bite which is there. I will take the radiographs, that's the OPG. When we look at the OPG, we find that the upper third molars are impacted, but their level is below the cemento-enamel junction of the second molars. We'll always quote this article when we analyze the third molar, because this is probably a non-extraction case in which we are planning to dislice the upper arch. So when we look at the lateral cephalogram and we trace out the position of the third molar, which is below the cemento-enamel junction, we can classify them according to 3 parts. The first one is that when the third molar is positioned below the cemento-enamel junction of the second molar. The next one is it's just at the level. And the third one is when it has crossed and it has come into occlusion. In the first case, we have to notice that lots of time when we extract or when we want to dislice the upper arch, we want to extract the third molar. But in this case, the third molar is below the CEJ. So extraction is a bit of a question mark. However, prophylactic extraction is always good. But if patients don't want to go ahead with the surgical process, we can do away with it if we see that the distalization is progressing well. The second option in which the CEJ level, where the third molar has crossed the level of the CEJ of the second molar, extraction is the only option. The third, if you want to dislice the upper arch and the third molar is in occlusion, extraction of the third molar is the only option. If you want to go through this article, there is a beautiful article, a systematic review in Anglo Orthodontics on the efficacy of molar distalization associated with second and third molar eruption state, which you can go through. Now, in this case, it is the first situation, and hence, and since the patient did not want it, we are not planning to extract the third molar. If you go to the cephalometry, we need to assess. That's a tracing in a Pneumocept software. That's a composite analysis. Once the tracing is done, we find that the upper incisors are pretty retroclined and the lower incisors are also retroclined, and there is a 100% deep bite. If you superimpose it over photographs, we also understand that this is a case of a horizontal growth pattern. Now, we have the values once we superimpose the tracing on the of the lateral cephalogram on the photograph. We find that the A and B angle is 7 degrees. So it's a proper class 2 case. The upper incisors are retroclined. The lower incisors are almost normally inclined. The FMA is the 19, which shows that the patient is a horizontal grower. The nasolabial angle is obtuse, so we would be very cautious if at all we want to extract in this. So what is the net diagnosis out of the lateral cephalogram is it's a class 2 skeletal base, horizontal growth pattern, retrocline upper incisors, retrocline lower incisors, and a convex facial profile. So when we have analyzed this case, we need to know as to what the treatment planning is. So we went in, what we want to do about this case is that this patient was didn't want extraction. So it could be one of the proximal stripping could be one of the options, but then we thought that distalization of the upper arch, since it's the end on molar on the right side and a class 1 on the left side, and well within the limits of biology, we can go ahead with distalization. So you can go through this article, a beautiful article by Almeida on the biomechanics of extraarticular bone screws. So what do we want to do in this case? There are 3 scenarios in which, in a case in which the upper incisors, you can dislice the upper with a short hook, the ones with a long hook, and the one with even longer hook. Now, we would say that we really want to go ahead and do the second situation. So we want to do the second situation in which we have a optimum height of the hook. Now, this is a case of a non-extraction. Therefore, we feel that this case is non-extraction. We want leveling and alignment of the upper arch and the lower arch, and we want maxillary arch distalization. So that's our treatment plan for this case. We can do a bit of proximal stripping in the lower arch if we feel that the lower incisors are flaring too much. So what is the appliance prescription that we have? We have a Clippy C. This patient was very conscious about looks, and therefore we opted for a passive self ligation system, a ceramic one, and we use a formula M1. So that's the MBT system. So what is the torque and the tip values of this? It's like the regular MBT brackets. So we have adequate torque in the upper arch in this case. That's about 17 degrees in the incisors and in the central incisors, and 10 degrees in the lateral incisors. So torque is here to our advantage because this is a case where the upper incisors are retroclined, and we need to get a normal inclination of the upper arch. So in the lower arch, it's a regular MBT system again, the formula M, in which you have -6 degree torque in the lower anterior, 0 in the canines, and the subsequent normal values in the MBT system. So this is the system that we are using in this case. So what's the wire sequencing in this case? The wire sequencing is like the normal one. It's starting with 016, then 018 SS, the 1925 NiTi, keeping it for about 60 days or so. And when the leveling and alignment has happened, we would start off with 1925 SS, which was kept for about 360 days for the distalization of the upper arch. And the settling is done with a 014 NiTi. The lower is merely leveling and alignment. So it's 016 NiTi, 018 SS, 1925 NiTi, and 1925 SS. So the working arch wire in this case is a 1925 SS, which is also a posted wire, or you can use a crimpable hook also. But the height of the hook has to be kept at the level of the infrazygomatic bone screw so that you get translation of the maxillary dentation. Now, the first step after leveling and alignment is to place the infrazygomatic bone screw. It's not a scope of this presentation to show how it's placed, but then we'll have a brief about it. We can place it in 2 areas, the one by Lin and one by Lu, one where the infrazygomatic bone screw is placed lateral to the second molar, and or it could also be placed lateral to the sixth. We prefer to place according to the Lin's method. So it is extra-alveolar placement. Since it's an extra-alveolar placement that is not within in the interdental region, therefore it's all very safe to place it, and you don't have chances of the long screws coming in contact with the roots. You can go through this article, which is written by us in the Journal of Indian Orthodontic Society, to get an overview of the clinical perspective of infrazygomatic bone screws. So how are they placed? There is a unique way of placement of bone screws. That's the thing. I prefer to use a BioRay bone screw. It's made of stainless steel. And once you have inserted it and localized it, That's 1 or 2 mm above the mucogingival junction. You place it initially, get a catch on the bone, and then you need to make a swing to your driver. That's about 55 to 70 degrees. Once you have made the swing, you need to reinsert the screws further inside within the bone. Now, this process helps you in keeping the screws away from the roots of the teeth and keep it parallel to the tooth, which helps in the discalization process. So your screws is no way going to affect the discalization process because they are no way placed interdentally. So how does this biomechanics progress? That's a unique diagram. You can look into it carefully. So the first thing is that you place an infrazygomatic screw. That's the size is in this case 2 into 14 millimeter screw. The collar is about 7 mm, and the amount of the spiral within the bone is also about 7 mm. It's made of stainless steel. We are also going to use a 1925 stainless steel posted archware, but we are going to give an accentuated curve of speed to that wire. So the amount of force that is given from the bone screw for discalization of the maxillary arch on a single side is about 300 to 350 grams. You can give it with a E-chain or with a coil spring. It's up to you. But what does it do? It brings about a clockwise rotation, which means that the upper incisors are going to become a bit retroclined. Now, it is detrimental in this case because the upper incisors are already retroclined because it's a class 2 division 2 case. So what we do is that we give a sweep in the wire. That's the accentuated curve of speed that we give. So what happens is you get a bit of torque in the wire. So that helps in prevention of dumping of the upper incisors. So it gets good normal inclination. It also has a mild intrusive force in the posteriors and a mild intrusive force in the anteriors. Now, what is the net effect of this biomechanics is that it brings about discalization of the arch. It also has an occlusal plane control. So it's mildly intrusive in nature. If you want to know more about the accentuated curve of speed mechanics, you can go through this article by Chiolo Pike, which he presented in the AO annual session, Philadelphia 2013. So that's how we are going to progress with this case. So the treatment progress would be that we are using 1925 SS in the upper. You have to place a bone screw on the left hand side also. That's because even if the force may not be 300 grams, it could be about 200 grams. Even though the molar relationship is class 1, in order to maintain the occlusal plane. Otherwise, you will get quite a lot of canting of the occlusal plane, and you have canting of smile also. So in this case, you have to place a bone screw on the left hand side also. The force is merely used in this case to balance out on the pitch, roll, and the yaw aspect of it. So what do we do on the right hand side? As we have described, you have the upper arch discalization with bone screws in progress. So that's a screw into place, and we know how much the amount of force is. So this is our progress in the treatment. So once we have displaced the upper arch, we want to settle the occlusion. That's very important for retention purpose. So that's what we do. We place 149 tie for settling. The lower is on a 1925 steel. So, and the midlines are on, and you can see that the deep bite has really corrected. So that's the end result. So we got a class 1 molar and a canine relationship. On the right hand side, it was class 2 to start with. And left hand side is also maintained at class 1 molar and canine. And if you look into that, there is a midline which is perfectly coinciding. The lower midline is slightly shifted to the right by about 0.5 millimeters, but that's well within acceptable limits. So we have got good decrowding of the anteriors, upper anteriors, and also got good amount of torque. The patient's oral hygiene was not too great, so you see a little bit of white spot lesions in this case. So what did we achieve on the occlusal perspective? We got decrowding of the upper anteriors and correction of torque of the upper anteriors. You can see that we have placed a bonded lingual retainer both in the upper and the lower arch. So the decrowding of the lower anteriors was also done. So what is the final result of the treatment? This is the final result in which there is a very balanced face and the midlines are perfectly on. The facial midline looks good. The SMILE is excellent. You can look into the SMILE aesthetic. If you look into the SMILE aesthetics, also you find that the gummy smile is not there and the decrowding has been taken care of. The profile view shows that it's still a mild class 2 or mild convex profile, but then a good amount of dentoalveolar camouflage has been done. So what does the post-treatment OPG show? The post-treatment OPG show that the roots and the overall status of the dentition is all very good at the end of discalization. So that's good. We did advise a prophylactic extraction of 1/8 and 2/8 for the patient, which she told that she's going to do. That's good in order to prevent any form of relapse. But however, studies show that it does not have an impact after discalization has already been achieved. So what the cephalometric parameters show? It shows that, yes, the composite analysis shows that you have a good dental relationship as of now. So tracing shows that, yes, the upper incisors have been well uprighted. Horizontal growth pattern is still there. But we did overcome a lot of overjet, and good discalization was achieved at the end of the day. So when we superimpose, we find over the photographs, we find that good significant change in the profile has been brought about. So what are the parameters at the end of the treatment? The parameter shows that the ANB is significantly reduced to 3 degrees. That's very good. So you actually guided the mandible into a better place. The upper incisors inclinations are far better as of now, not ideal, but still far better than how it started. It's 18 degrees now. IMP is 112. That's decent for a class 2 camouflage case. The FME is 22 degrees, so she is still a horizontal grower. And the nasolabial angle on the lower lip to E line is almost perfect. So the soft tissue drape is good. We know that it's a case of a retrognathic mandible, but there's such minor problems, skeletal problems, don't warrant a surgical intervention. So at the end of the treatment, it is still a mild class 2 tendency, a horizontal growth pattern, but a good camouflage of a skeletal class 2 relationship. So how did we progress with the treatment? This is how we started with 100% deep bite and a class 2 molar relationship. So we went ahead with discalization of arch after sequential changes of wires. Then settling of occlusion, and this is what we achieved in the final results. So you got a good class 1 relationship at the end of the day. So what happened to the anterior segment? You started with 100% deep bite, which is very, very traumatic. That is one of the reasons she should go ahead with the treatment, which she went ahead with. This is the leveling and an alignment phase and the discalization phase, then settling phase. And finally, we have the deep bite, which is absolutely corrected. She also has a good amount of overjet, which gives a good amount of incisional guidance. So what is the net result at the end of the day? The comparison shows that she has a very balanced face. Note that the chin deviation has corrected. Her smile is definitely improved. It's great improvement to the smile. The gumminess is gone. The crowding has been taken care of. She's really happy at the end of the day. So that's a smile post-treatment. So we have taken care of the gummy smile. That's purely by the mechanics. No procedures like gingivectomy or other things were done in this case. So that's the profile at the end of the day. We see that initially she started with a deep mentolabial sulcus and a severe horizontal growth pattern, but it's greatly improved post-treatment. So the convexity of the profile is reduced at the end of the day. So what did we achieve with respect to the cephalometric perspective is very important because this is a case of 100% deep bite and a class 2 division 2, but the upper incisors were purely retrocline. So we needed a lot of torquing of the incisors. So what did we get? We got good inclination of the upper and the lower incisors at the end of the day. The lowers were slightly proclined, but it's definitely acceptable in a class 2 camouflage case. So how can do we learn more about IZC and BSS? This is one of our published article which talks about biomechanics of IZC and buccal shell bone screws. You can go through them. It gives you a real in-depth into how to place them and what are the net results you are expecting and what are the criteria, what are the end results and what are the anatomical limits that you need to take care at the end of the day. So that brings an end to our presentation. It's the COVID time, so stay home and stay safe. Be with the healthcare workers. Let's support them and help the frontline workers. Thank you for being with us.